You can said I've seen ya winning with Argentina. I need a center mid to and so he center mid through. And now we've got Alexis. Alexis is majestic. Mac Allister, he's magic. He's red and it's fantastic. La 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 la. You can said I've seen ya winning with Argentina. I need a center mid to and so he's center mid through. And now we've got Alexis. Alexis is majestic. Mac Allister, he's magic. He's red and it's fantastic. La 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 la.
Through the lot, now you know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
Yes, people, we're back in the building. You already know what time it is, and we've got some actual good news to talk about today. Not another scout report. We're not here to talk about players that we're interested in. No. Today we're here to talk about Liverpool and their new signing, Alexis Mac Allister, who has now signed officially from Brighton and Hove Albion. So, guys, talk to me, man. You know, Liverpool finally got this deal, you know, done and dusted. You know, it's a deal that had been spoken about quite a lot, you know, in the last couple of weeks, last couple of months. You know, we've had other targets and things like that. Obviously, Jude Bellingham, who's now looking like he's going to Real Madrid. But who cares about all of that? Liverpool finally signed their man, the man that Jurgen Klopp has wanted, and that is Alexis Mac Allister. So, guys, let me know in the comment section. What do you guys think? Are you guys happy? Are we joyous? Are we thinking, yes, you know, this is the start of a new rebuild? Are we in a position right now where, you know, we just kind of build from here, to be honest with you? You know, is it one of those kind of things where he's the first piece of the puzzle, you know, for Liverpool for next season? We already know about our midfield issues and stuff like that. There are obviously other players who have been linked with the football club, but you know, we need to get that first one in. And it's quite good that, you know, Liverpool were able to get this deal done and dusted, you know, so quickly before I think he goes away for international duty as well. So, you know, he starts pre-season nice and early. Jurgen Klopp can get him in, do his thing, and then we can kind of go from there. He has taken the number 10 for Liverpool, so we will be calling him Mac 10 when he does well. I already know some of the jokes if he does flop. I already know the jokes that are coming. You know, once he has a bad performance, which is inevitably going to happen with any player, but once he has that, I already know the jokes with the Mac 10. But you know, who cares, man? You know, who cares? Liverpool finally, you know, signed a midfielder. I think the last midfielder that Liverpool signed was Thiago. Yeah, Thiago. Unless there's another one I'm missing, but. You know, a lot of people have obviously spoken about this. You know, the deal was apparently for 35 million, which was the release clause that was triggered, put out obviously by Fabrizio Romano, confirmed by him. Liverpool have obviously signed Mac Allister for 35M. So a lot of people, and I've spoken yesterday, you know, I was on the Jamie Phillips show, big up Jamie, with Jerry, and you know, we were speaking about, you know, that fee. You know, people are saying, you know, is it a bargain? You know, all of that kind of stuff. Is it still, you know, especially in today's market, you know, people are just trying to measure as to where do we put this kind of deal, you know, in this market. And I think when you're looking at it on the face of it, 35 million for a decent midfielder, I think it's a good deal. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's a deal, obviously, depending on which way it goes at the end of the day. Either it's a fantastic deal and it's going to be the deal of the summer, or it's going to be one of those deals where you're like, we only paid 35 million, so no one's really crying about it. You know, if it doesn't really work out or he gets a crazy injury and, you know, things like that. Brighton obviously had put that contract in prior to the World Cup. So obviously a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, we stole him from Brighton and things like that. Ultimately, that was probably his market value at that stage when they did sign him. And to be honest, it might have even been a little bit high, you know, for Brighton, to be honest with you. You know, maybe they didn't think, of course, nobody knew. In my personal opinion, I mean, I don't remember or I don't recall seeing anybody speaking about Mac Allister having a fantastic World Cup. I think it was more a shock that he even made the World Cup squad, if I'm being totally honest. And then the fact that he had such a brilliant World Cup, obviously ending up winning it. Then, you know, towards the back end of the season from January onwards, having a decent season, you know, with Brighton, helping them to get into the Europa League as well. So all of these kind of factors, I think when you take all of that into consideration, of course, you're going to look at it and say, oh, well, we fleeced Brighton and stuff like that. But I think, you know, of course, look, Brighton would have wanted to have gotten more money, but they couldn't have foreseen what was going to happen with Mac Allister after that. Well, during the World Cup and then after, you know, the World Cup. So it's one of those ones. You can see it both ways. I can see why people would say we'd fleece them, but then also I'm looking at it from Brighton's perspective. You know, they got him for a relatively low fee, you know, as they always do with the Moises Caicedos, the Enciso, Buonanates, you know, the players like this, they're getting for such low fees that regardless of anything, they're selling these guys at profit. Of course, you would want to maximize your profit as best as you possibly can. I'm sure Borussia Dortmund would have wanted to sell Haaland for 150 million, as opposed to the 50 million or 51 million that they sold him for. But you got a profit on that player. You can then obviously move on and then try and, you know, go out there and sign another player, which I can see Brighton doing anyway, which is they're just a well-oiled machine, you know, as a football club. You know, Tony Bloom there and the rest of the team, you know, they seem to be able to find these players. The recruitment team are very good at finding these type of players. So I'm not too worried, you know, in regards to Brighton, and I'm not too bothered, to be honest with you. I'm just more looking at, you know, for Liverpool. Now, obviously, where do we see someone like an Alexis Mac Allister playing? You know, what kind of position? And I think the first thing I always think about, you know, is what does Klopp want to do next season in regards to how we play? Now, obviously, the back end of the season, we were playing this 3-2-2-3 formation. Prior to that, it was majority of the season was 4-3-3. Yeah, maybe there was a couple of games where we might have used different formations and stuff like that in the odd 1 or 2, but you know, the majority of the season was 4-3-3. That was Klopp's go-to. It's been Klopp's go-to since he joined the football club. So where do we think, you know, Mac Allister is going to fit into the squad, you know, next season? And we're looking here at, you know, some of the positions he's played. Now, I've done a scout report on him, so I'm not going to go too deep into this, but you know, when we look at some of the positions he's played for Brighton, you know, here in a double pivot with Billy Gilmore and a 4-2-3-1, you know, on that left-hand side, 4-4-2, again on that left-hand side, central midfield. Again in that 4-2-3-1, but this time as an attacking midfielder. And then obviously in a 4-3-3 for Argentina during the World Cup on that left-hand side. And I think it's quite interesting because obviously if I'm looking at, say, the 4-3-3 formation, which I think Liverpool might, you know, use next season, will we then just put him on that left-hand side, you know, potentially? Again, it might be a position that he, you know, he can play, and maybe that's where Klopp sees him. We don't really play 4-2-3. Well, we never really play 4-2-3-1. We don't have a number. Well, Klopp doesn't use a number 10. Let's just say that we have number 10 in terms of we have a Carvalho who is a number 10 at this football club, but he didn't really want to use him. Didn't really feel that he could use that system with him in it. Maybe he thinks if an Alexis Mac Allister is there, maybe he can use him in that position. And again, I don't know. A lot of people are saying to me, no, we're going to play with Trent invert. I have no idea. And if I'm being honest, I don't think anybody does. You know, I don't think you're going to find anyone who actually knows what Jurgen Klopp wants to do for next season. Does Jurgen Klopp? That's one question. A question I asked is, does Jurgen Klopp know what he wants to do next season? And the reason why I asked that, not because I think he's clueless or anything, but is it going to come down to the availability of the players that he wants to sign? So if he can get in, you know, again, the reports with the Kones, the Thuram's, Gravenberch's, Zoboslai, Gabri Vega, you know, all players that I guess we're supposedly interested in. Is it going to depend on whether we get those players in first and then he decides? I think he has alluded to that. Again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, guys, but I'm sure he's alluded to, because he spoke about Trent Alexander-Arnold's position, and I think he alluded to, depending on who we sign and stuff like that, that might then depend on what kind of formation we play. And again, it's like I'm 50-50 with it. I'm like, I do want you to have a plan, because then you go into the transfer window and then it's just a little bit wishy-washy. So, for example, I want you to have a plan so that at least it shouldn't really matter what player that you do sign, because then you already have a plan. So if you can't get player A, you got B, you got your C's, you got your D's. But then at the same time, I'm like, it's going to be dependent on those players that you can actually sign, because then you might not be able to play the way that you actually want to play. And then you don't want to have to square pegs round holes. We don't want to keep doing that. We've done that so much at Liverpool, buy players, Thiago obviously being the main one, buy players, you don't really use them properly. And then you don't really see the best of these kind of players. And that is probably my thing with an Alexis Mac Allister. I will say this now categorically. I think he's a very good player. I do think he's a good player. I think he's played in a team who play better football than Liverpool, better build-up play, interchanges, the way they like to play in these half spaces when they get further up the field, the way that the players in the midfield positions, the way that those midfielders actually move around quite a lot and then work in tandem with the defense. I really, really like, and De Zerbi's got this team really ticking. I don't feel like that's Liverpool's kind of way. Liverpool are quite direct in what they do. And again, it's worked for them. So, of course, there's going to be the one side of things where you're looking at it and thinking, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But then we saw what happened last season. If you haven't got the right players in those right positions, we don't really seem to have a plan B. And when we don't have a plan B, that's where the problems start to come in. And what I mean by plan B is it could either just be you don't have the players there, and the players that you do have, you're just putting them in any old position. And then when you're putting these players in any old position, it kind of looks a little bit disjointed. And I don't want that for an Alexis Mac Allister, as a whole. I do think that if you're able to utilize Mac Allister properly, if you can put him in the right position, whatever that position may actually be, then I think you can get yourself a really good player who can get this team, ticking, and moving forward. Of course, not just him by himself. I wouldn't want Liverpool to just sign him and one other. I think we need a bit more than that, to be able to compete in the Premier League, especially with all these other teams. But, it's a decent start. I do think it's a decent start. Now, looking at some of the formations that Liverpool may or may not play. So this is in a 3-2-4-1 formation. So I've got Mac Allister playing potentially as the left defensive midfielder. Again, this is all just potentially, or in that left attacking midfield, position. The reason why I put him in that left defensive midfield position is because, I'm seeing him for Brighton, and he does like to play in that kind of double pivot alongside a Moises Caicedo. Now, the difference that you've got with a Moises Caicedo and a Trent is that obviously Trent is going to be the more creative one, in that team. So, he's going to be the one who's going to try and find the passes, etc., etc. Moises Caicedo isn't there to do that. He's there to almost just mop up, but he's so comfortable on the ball. And, big up Ends, because he sent me a clip, looking at the way that Brighton play and stuff like that. And one of the main things that I like from Brighton is that what they do very, very well is they'll draw the opponents onto you and still pass it. So, for example, Lewis Dunk might have the ball. He'll then play a pass into Moises Caicedo, who might actually have a man coming onto him, or even two men either side of him. But because he's so comfortable on the ball, and because he's so cool and calm, and he can do his thing, and he trusts his own abilities, he's either going to pass it back, turn himself out of that situation, or give that pass out to the other centre backs or the wing backs that they've got, Estupinan or whoever's on that right hand side. And that's something that I don't really see from Liverpool. I think that because at times we can be quite rushed, or it's very, very slow. There's not really a middle ground with it. I think that we can get pickpocketed quite easily. And that's where I'm almost like, okay, if that's the case, then we're going to need to change up the way. And I think most people agree, Liverpool needs to start passing the ball a lot quicker. Maybe that might work in having an Alexis Mac Allister, there in the team. Maybe he might try and help with that build-up play, because I do think that is a massive weakness for Liverpool, is our build-up play. Maybe Alexis Mac Allister is going to be brought in, maybe, of course, alongside others, which is then going to help, towards that. But, that remains to be seen. in a 4-3-3. I've got him here in the two positions because I thought I don't see him in a 4-3-3 playing by himself as a defensive midfielder. I don't think that. I don't see that. I just don't see that. I don't think he's good enough to play as a defensive midfielder by himself. Again, double pivot, no problem, but by himself, I'm not confident with that at all. So I think we would either sign someone or Fabinho will obviously slot in there. But the left centre mid and right centre mid, again, that's the kind of position that I see him in if Liverpool, of course, go back to that kind of formation. And then obviously this is the 3-2-2-3 formation that we're currently playing at the moment. To be honest, it's the same as the 3-2-4-1, if I'm being totally honest. But, you know, again, left defensive midfield, is he going to play in that Curtis Jones position where he's playing left the kind of that hybrid 8-10/10 role, or could he be on the right hand side? You know, I don't really see him. Again, I have zero idea what Klopp wants to do. I just want to reiterate that because I just don't know. Yeah, I don't see what Klopp's trying to do, if I'm being totally honest. But when I'm looking at, you know, his heat map, it's mostly in those attacking areas that he does play. So maybe we are looking at him playing in that Curtis Jones position. And again, mostly on that left-hand side. I don't really see him on that right-hand side because I don't really feel like he'd be comfortable in terms of when he's receiving the ball, receiving a pass from someone, his movements as well. I feel like he'd be a lot more comfortable playing on that left-hand side. So then will that then change who we then look to sign? If, again, we're talking about Kone, we're talking about Thuram. All three players like to play on that left-hand side. And from what I can see, there's only going to be at most two positions to fill up there. Now, of course, we want depth. So I'm not going to be sweating if we get all three of them and we've just got depth there just in case someone needs to drop in, drop out, etc., etc. Not really a problem. But at the same time, I'm just worried about how you're going to utilize, you know, all of these kind of players in these positions. Again, like I said, I don't mind having the depth. So if you're signing all three, but not all three are actually considered to be starters. So for example, he might see it as maybe Alexis Mac Allister as a starter and one of Kone or Thuram are going to be starters and one of them hits the bench. I've got no problem with that. I don't, people are telling me, you know, they can play on that right central midfield position. Of course they can play there. You know, they could probably play everywhere in the midfield. Is that their strongest area? Is that the right profile of player that we need in that area? In my opinion, no. None of those three players are right central midfield players. I wouldn't put them in that positions because again, we're going back to square pegs, round holes. We need to be smart. I say we, Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp needs to be smart with the type of players that he is signing. It's all well and good having players who are versatile, but when they've predominantly only been playing in one position, it's going to be difficult for them to play, you know, in another position. Hence the reason why I'm always thinking, why not get players who can play in that other position? But again, that's obviously to later. So, you know, it is just to really just take a look, you know, and again, people in the comments, let me know, what do you think, like in terms of, you know, Alexis Mac Allister? You know, he's spoken about, you know, how happy he is joining the club. He's obviously put out by LiverpoolFC.com. I wanted to be in from the first day of pre-season, so it's good that everything is done. I'm looking forward to meeting my teammates. It was a fantastic year for me, World Cup, what we achieved at Brighton, but now it's time to think about Liverpool and try to be a better player and a better human being every day. Since I won the World Cup, I said that I want to win more trophies, and I think that this is the club, this club will help me to do that. That's the aim. And when you're in a big club like this one, you have to win trophies. So that's what I want. Since I arrived here, I can see how big this club is, the players we have, the staff, everyone. I'm really pleased and looking forward to playing for this club. So you can see he's excited about joining Liverpool. Of course, he's come from Brighton. Well, he's come from Argentina to then come to Brighton, to then move up to Liverpool. Of course, he's moved up the stages. And that is the type of signing and those type of signings that we do like to do, especially under Jurgen Klopp. You know, so it fits the profile in terms of that, in terms of we don't go for the top stars. You know, we can all agree with that. We don't seem to sign top players. And by the way, not all top players are going to cost you top money, if I'm being totally honest with you. There are top players out there who might not cost you as much, should I say, as like a Jude Bellingham, for example. You know, I'm not saying that you must go out there and spend 100 million, but we don't sign those type of players. We sign players who are on, you know, a level or two down, you know, and we try to work them up and we try to turn them into world-class players and things like that. Again, not every player is going to turn into that, but that's obviously our aim. And then we can kind of move from there. And I think that's what Jurgen Klopp likes to work with quite a lot. I don't think he's a manager who can work with the top stars, if I'm being honest, just because he's someone who likes to manage that. You know, he likes to be in control of the kind of situation. And, you know, with some of these top stars, you ain't going to be in control. You're just there to get us on the football pitch and, you know, do the job, as opposed to try to manage quite a lot of big egos, the Mbappes, the Messis, the Neymars, the Ronaldos, you know, people of that kind of ilk. I don't feel like he'd fit into that, but he fits into what Liverpool do, and vice versa. Liverpool fit into what, you know, Jurgen Klopp wants to do. And Alexis Mac Allister fits into that. For me, it's just all about the position. It's just all about where's he going to play? How are Liverpool going to play? Let me know in the comments. What do you think we're going to do next season? How is it going to look, you know, next season? Like I keep saying, I do think he's a good signing. Out of 10, I give it a 6 out of 10. I think, you know, he's a decent player. It remains to be seen how he fits into this squad. You know, we play a totally different way, in my opinion, than Brighton. You know, Brighton are all about possession, build-up play, you know, not even quick transitions. It's just more about their movements. The ball movement that they've got is really, really good. It's really at a top level. Liverpool, I don't really feel like that's the case. We are more direct, fast, counter-attacking kind of team. Pressure, intensity, you know, all of that. He's going to have to acclimatize himself to that kind of football. Will he be able to do it? Again, it remains to be seen. But it's going to be interesting to see, and it's going to be interesting to watch, because he's one of those kind of signings that, you know, when I look at someone like a Mac Allister, I'm probably a bit more excited than I would have been, say, with a Darwin Núñez for it, or, you know, the summer that we had last summer. You know, I thought was absolutely underwhelming, if I'm being totally honest with you, with the players that we did sign in. You know, the big summer signing obviously being Darwin Núñez, and Núñez has come in for a lot of criticism, rightly so, if I'm being honest with you. Some a bit too harsh, but I think rightly so in terms of his overall performances. But again, coming to a new country, all of these kind of things. With Mac Allister, you've got a player who's already accustomed to the Premier League. He understands the Premier League. He's done well, you know, for Brighton in the Premier League. So, of course, we're going to look at that and say maybe he will be able to seamlessly, you know, find himself into that first team, and, you know, he's not going to look out of place in a Liverpool team. But again, it all depends on what Jurgen Klopp does. Hopefully he does the right thing, plays him in the right position, and then kind of go from there. At the moment, I don't really have a thought really on where he could play. I reckon I'd have to see the rest of our transfer dealings in terms of incomings and outgoings to understand maybe, and kind of know which direction. Obviously, pre-season game will obviously help with that as well. So, you know, we go from there. But guys, Liverpool have obviously signed Alexis Mac Allister, 35 million, release clause triggered. Are you guys happy? Do you think this is a good start? Who do you guys want to see next? Who do you think we're going to sign next, you know, in this window? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I'm G, and I am out.
Jurgen said I've seen ya winning with Argentina. I need a centre mid too, and so he centre mid through. And now we've got Alexis. Alexis is majestic. Mac Allister, he's magic. He's red and it's fantastic. La 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 la. Jurgen said I've seen ya winning with Argentina. I need a centre mid too, and so he centre mid through. And now we've got Alexis. Alexis is majestic. Mac Allister, he's magic. He's red and it's fantastic. La 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 la.